Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Money Puck, How to Select an Optimal NHL Team. Although Palantir is focused in the upstream oil and gas sector, our products can be used in many different industries. Spending targets, business constraints, and key performance indicators are universal to nearly all businesses. In today's webinar with Jamie Wong, he will be using PalantirPLAN to select an optimal NHL team. So over the past few years, there has been a significant increase of interest in the use of advanced statistics in hockey. Much like ERA or OBP, metrics like Corsi and PDO are being used more and more to evaluate players and teams. Although the jury is still out on the effectiveness of these indicators, many NHL teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs, Edmonton Oilers, have begun to employ statisticians to factor in the team's decision making. So given these new metrics, what would the ultimate Corsi team look like in the NHL? What would their goal differentiation be? How would it stack up to other teams in the NHL? Within this webinar, Jamie will go through how to build a portfolio of players while considering distinct business rules such as positional requirements and NHL salary cap. Jamie Wong joined Palantir in 2002 and has worked in a variety of roles. Currently, he works as a team lead with a consulting services group and oversees ongoing research projects, consulting, and technical sales. While his background is in economics, he also has experience in oilfield instrumentation. As a passionate hockey fan, Jamie has been following the rise of hockey analytics. And as a side project, he has been working on understanding how Palantir's applications can include and use this new data. So without further ado, I am very pleased to present Jamie Wong.
Great, thank you very much for that introduction. Like she said, my name is Jamie Wong, and today we're going to be talking about how to optimize an NHL team. So this is just kind of a fun project that I spent some time on this past month to maybe get away from some of the doom and gloom of recent commodity prices, and it's kind of a fun way to see how our products work too. So the agenda for today, I'm just going to go through a quick overview of who we are as Palantir and what PalantirPLAN is. For some of the folks that may be joining us from the South, go through just some brief hockey basics, talk about the NHL landscape, the rise of what we call hockey analytics, and then begin talking about looking at NHL teams as portfolios, and then dive into PalantirPLAN. So Palantir is the leading provider of integrated dynamic planning solutions for the upstream energy industry. Now this includes both asset and corporate planning solutions and creating a harmonious relationship, bridging the two. We're located globally. We typically follow our clients, so all of our major clients have regional coverage. This is just a flavor of who we're currently working with, many international players as well as domestic. And our offerings as a company. So you can see on the top left here, our services range from everything from technical consulting to strategic and consulting. On the right, we've got our software solutions. So again, this AX, so asset versus corporate level solutions, and bridging the two in the middle. At the bottom is a combination of the solutions that really bridge our services and software together. So everything from reserves and economics to supporting bid rounds and field development planning. Where we're going to be focusing today, PalantirPLAN AX and PalantirPLAN, very similar products. PalantirPLAN has a bit more beefed up optimization capabilities, but very, very similar products. So what they are is they allow our clients to both visualize, analyze, and optimize their portfolio of projects. And so what happens is you can bring in all of your assets, including all of your prospects, take a look at your risk measures, and then both run optimizations and kind of break down to create this optimal portfolio of projects that you want to have moving forward. So let's get right into it. Hockey basics. This should be probably fairly straightforward, but each team consists of 20 players. So that's 12 forwards. So these people up here, 6 defense. So these ones here, and then 2 goalies. Within the forward group, it can be broken up by position. So you're going to have 4 center, 4 right wing, and 4 left wing. And then for this analysis, I haven't really made any differentiation between defense. Maybe that's because I'm a forward, and I think, back there is all mystery to me. So the NHL landscape. So this is just kind of setting up a context for how I got into this analysis and what's really happening in the NHL right now. So in 2005, there's this lengthy lockout between the Players Association and the NHL for salary disputes, but at the end of it, they reached many deals, but one of the biggest ones to come out of it was in imposing a salary cap. And so the goal of this salary cap was to create parity between all the NHL teams. Prior to that, there was teams that were haves and teams that were have-nots, and the cap really tries to balance that out. So as of 2015, the NHL salary cap was 69 million US. So the rise of analytics. So what's really come out of that 2005 negotiation? The salary cap has been a huge success. I think a lot of people wouldn't argue with that. It's made the NHL more competitive than ever. As we saw in Calgary this year, it came down really to the last game to make the playoffs. So teams can't really outspend each other anymore. It's really trying to find the slight edge over the opposition, because games are so close and it's coming down to 1 or 2 points at the end of the season that really make a difference. So what's happened is there's been a significant focus in puck possession. And what's happened is the NHL actually doesn't measure puck possession. So going back a few years, they're using what's called Corsi and Fenwick, or what the NHL has now released is shot attempts or there's shot attempts and then unblocked shot attempts. So Corsi is SAT, Fenwick, USAT. And so part of this rise in the analytics, and we've seen it in the last couple of years, is the NHL now tracks and posts enhanced stats on their website. So this is a pretty major breakthrough for the analytics community. And teams like Toronto and Edmonton, maybe not great examples because of their standings, but they've also employed analytics teams. So it's really increasing coverage for this field. So this is more of an overview, but Corsi and Fenwick. Corsi just they both relate to just how many shots your team's getting versus how many shots your team's giving up. So the Corsi stat we're going to be looking at is just basically out of all the shots in a game directed towards a net, how many of them, or what percentage of them, are for your team. So this is kind of a proxy for puck possession again, because teams who possess the puck more typically win more games, is what's been assumed. Cap hit, fairly straightforward. It's the dollar amount a player's salary counts against its team's salary cap. GAA, or goals against average, is the number of goals a team allows on a nightly basis or on a game basis. And then the save percentage is the total goals over total shots amount taken. So the closer to 1, the better. So money puck. So this has been something that I've been working on, like I said, for the past month or so, but it's gone back maybe a bit longer than that. Just a fun little side project to show how our tools can be applied in many different ways. And so I would argue actually that a hockey team, in essence, like an EMP company, is just a portfolio of players or a portfolio of assets. And so like an EMP company, there's a capital spend on these assets which have specific returns or performance indicators that can be measured. So their portfolio has a budget, like I said, portfolio indicators or performance indicators, And they also must obey certain business rules or constraints. So in this case, we have a salary cap. We have to have a certain number of players. So these are all kind of business rules that this team must adhere to. So on that note, so as the NHL kind of increases the amount of data that they're collecting, just like E&P companies over the past few years, as there's been this rise in big data, there's an increasing need to be able to visualize and analyze this information. So both the data and applications are extremely powerful tools, and the argument I want to make is that they can help augment subjective decisions and experience. They're not going to replace any experience. They're not going to replace the years of knowledge that hockey operations have, or planning teams have, or engineers have. But they're going to augment these subjective decisions and really allow these teams to find, to help make better decisions at the end of the day. So again, it's not going to ensure winning. Execution, asset selection, and timing are essential, but having this insight is going to be crucial moving forward, I think, for both fields, both for the NHL teams and for the E&P companies. So let's move into PalantirPLAN. So this is PalantirPLAN, and I'm just going to go through kind of a quick walkthrough of the screen. We're at about quarter after right now, so I believe this presentation is only going to take about half hour, maybe a bit more, but I should be wrapping up around 9:30. So PalantirPLAN, we've got our data grid here, and what this would typically be for E&P companies is this would be projects or wells, but what I've done is load in every single player in the NHL. So our data grid has, it's broken right now by team, division, and conference, and it works a lot like a pivot grid. So we can see we're looking at those darn Anaheim Ducks who beat the Flames this year. They're in the Pacific Division, they're in the Western Conference, and we can see all the different attributes for each player, so we can look at their cap cost in millions of dollars. For the goalies, we've got all their different stats, and we can keep going down the list and kind of break down each player that way. In the middle here, we've got our visualizations. So we've got our total cap cost by team, and these are broken down into pages. So this is just an intro, and this is just kind of to help get people familiarized by where I'm going with this. On the right, we've got our summary values. So these are rolled up aggregates from our entire portfolio of assets that we have in here. So again, this could easily be all of the wells in a specific area, so maybe the Drumheller area in Alberta. And we can take a look at our total cap cost. So we can see that the NHL is actually spending around $1.9 billion on player salaries. They make around 62,000 saves every year. There's 159 shutouts, 22,000 penalty minutes. So these are all indicators from my data grid. So what we'll notice about these two is that they actually update as I move and change my data grid. So now this will break it down by division, so we can see that Chicago is part of the Central Division. It also has one of the highest salary caps in the league. Again, changes to conference, so the visualization updates as I switch this around. Now with the KPIs, what happens is if I include and exclude projects, so here I've excluded the Boston Bruins, we can see that the cap number drops down. So we're able to dynamically change our portfolio view as we shift around these properties or include and exclude projects. So back to MoneyPuck. So just to kind of break this down a bit more, we can again shift this by team, and we can see that these are all our non-playoff teams, and we can see all our Corsi numbers. What's interesting about this, LA Kings, one of the better ones in the league, but didn't necessarily make the playoffs, so maybe not the purest stat, but still pretty interesting. So what our visualizations allow us to do is we can just apply filters to this, so we can right away begin analyzing this portfolio. So at this point, I'm more like a Gary Bettman type person. I'm looking at the league from a top down and having knowledge on every team in the league. It's not just one specific team right now. We'll get to that later if we have time. So as I was saying, we can break down by filters. So here we can look at our playoff teams and start doing a quick comparison on these, on our playoff teams. So we can see, again, Corsi, Chicago, Detroit, Tampa Bay, all pretty good Corsi stats. If we want to look at who is actually playing each other, we can go down by division. So let's look at this next round here, or the last round, second round winners, by conference, or by division. So we can see Chicago played Minnesota, Tampa Bay played Montreal, Anaheim played Calgary. And there's a bit of a trend here. We can see the three winners of the West, or three winners at the top here, which is pretty interesting. And so again, this is that shot metric. So looking at the ratio of shots in a game, these guys all had more shots than the other team, which is measure of puck possession. So they're doing pretty well. The other part about Plan that I haven't really talked about is our targets and our rules and then our snapshots. So I'm just going to start with snapshots here. And snapshots allow me to take specific snapshots of portfolios or projects that are included in my portfolio. So they help me kind of, again, break down my visualizations. So if I want to just look at Anaheim, I can click on Anaheim. I can see that they got 241 goals. Their goals against average was 2.49. They had a salary cap of 63 million. I can take a look at each of the teams here. So my Edmonton Oilers had a bit of a tough year. So I've just filtered on non-playoff teams. So bad goals against average, not the best Corsi stat. So snapshots are really helpful as they kind of track my analysis through time and let me kind of go back and compare them, which is really handy. So I'm just going to go back to all teams and our second round winners here. So the goal of this analysis was really to look at what the optimal NHL team would be. So this is more of a kind of a fantasy approach right now, and it's looking at, okay, out of the entire portfolio of NHL players, if I could combine them to make the best kind of Corsi team, what would that look like? And what would that look like if I had imposed certain business rules? So business rules being, I can go to my rules and I can say, just like in the hockey basics, I have to have at least 4 center, I need to have 6 defense, I need 2 goalies, 4 left wing, 4 right wing. So what would that look like? I can also set targets. So this is a bit tough to see, but this is total cap cost of 69 million. So if I'm spending right to the salary cap, I have to impose my business rules of all those positions, and I'm going to have a minimum save percentage. So I want my goalies to be pretty good. So I want them to have a combined average of 0.92, or an average of 0.92, or a combined average of 1.84. So what would this team look like? On its own, it'd be a pretty tough task to accomplish this. I mean, you kind of could do it by hand, but PalantirPLAN has optimization capabilities. We use linear programming, so we can input all of these rules, all of these targets, send it out to the LP server, and it'll give me back the optimal choice. So what we'll notice at this time is that my targets aren't satisfied. So that's because I've got all of the players included in this portfolio. So I've got basically every NHL team. So what I would do is I just simply select the LP. And here, what this is saying is, okay, which of these rules do we want to obey? So I want to obey all of them. What am I constrained on? So I have to have that 0.92 save percentage. I have to be under my salary cap. and I can include and exclude projects. So this will help me choose this optimal team. So what am I optimizing on? Well, Corsi. I want to see the best Corsi players from the league. These players typically have the most shot attempts, or typically they have the best ratio of shot attempts for their team while they're on the ice. So I want to see what this team would look like and compare it to the rest of the NHL. So you can simply run that. The solver will go out. It'll check for all these constraints, and it will come back and give me a solution once it finds it. So it'll just take a moment. So what that allows me to do, it gives me a couple options. I can take a snapshot, so I can say webinar snapshot. So this is again allowing me to kind of track my analysis as I move along. And it'll also allow me to apply it to see what that looks like. So you'll see that all my rules are green, my targets are satisfied. This page is meant for comparison, so I'll see on this page in my data viewer what's actually chosen, which is pretty cool. So out of all the NHL players, we'll see that it's excluded almost all of them, but it's picked a select few for this optimal NHL team, given my salary cap, given my save constraint, given all the business rules that I need. It'll pick the best assets for me. And this is something that I think EMP companies can use universally too. So this could easily be a measure of MPV while kind of obeying a certain risk criteria, selecting which prospects we should go for while considering my existing producing assets. So, I mean, this is, although a fantasy team, it's pretty interesting. It's taken some of the best center icemen in the league, but maybe it's made some shortcuts on a few of my defense here. So it's taken maybe some newer players to the league that maybe have lower salaries but have really high Corsi stats. We'll also notice some other anomalies. So this year, Andrew Hammond was kind of a rising star in Ottawa. He really helped them take them to the playoffs, but he came out of the minor leagues and has basically one of the lowest salaries in the league, which is pretty interesting. So it's kind of mix and matching some of your best but highest paid with some of your best value here. So moving back to this visualization, which I should probably explain in a bit more detail. So on the bottom here is our Corsi, and on the left here is our cap spend. So, you know, the lower here is likely better, but teams are more than, you know, happy to spend more if they have the payroll for it. And then the size of the bubble is the actual save percentage. So we have kind of an interesting trend here. We've got big bubbles past the 50% marker, so that means they're getting more shots on the opposition team than they're getting shot on. And so we'll notice that plus 50%, we've got Chicago, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Detroit. So all of these teams in this quadrant are basically all playoff teams, which is really interesting. We'll also notice that, you know, in this quadrant here, we've got a couple anomalies in Calgary, but for the most part, all non-playoff teams. So Corsi typically tends to be a fairly good indicator of how a team's going to perform. So going back to my optimization, where does my optimal team actually fit on this chart? How does it work in with the actual NHL? So we can use these snapshots. So right now I'm just comparing all the different teams in the NHL, but I can also compare the snapshots of, I've ran a few optimizations offline. So I've got a $51 million budget, a $69 million budget, and then just an unlimited budget to see what, if there wasn't a salary cap, could this improve? Would there be a better team? So let's just prepare that right now. So we've got these three bubbles that have appeared, and these are my different optimization runs. So I ran them with my LP, I took the snapshot, I did exactly what we did for this webinar snapshot, and now we can include it within my visualization here. And what's interesting about this is that regardless of my budget, I'm more constrained. I can find an optimal team, but my Corsi actually doesn't improve that much. So 58% is the best Corsi I could really get in the NHL right now, given that I need to have certain defense and certain center. I could explore this a bit more and maybe not have a discrepancy between right wing or left wing or center, and just see what the optimal forward basket would be. But it's pretty interesting that this is kind of an optimal threshold that we really have a tough time getting beyond. So we can actually break down these different snapshots and we can see the different trade-offs. So at $51 million, we don't get that big star center ice. We have to trade off and get Darren Helm, who's maybe a bit more of a value player, but still has a really good Corsi statistic. Our goalies, pretty good, but again, they're minor league players that have come up and performed well. When I moved to an unlimited budget, we get the big star goalies and Carey Price, Corey Snyder, we get Joe Thornton back, so it's a bit more flashy. So with $51 million, the optimizer helps us pick those really good value projects, and it helps us kind of discern if we have an unlimited budget, what would we do, versus if we only have, if we're constrained on our budget. We have to be far more careful about what we're choosing, and the optimizer kind of helps us pick those hidden gems in the mix. The kind of next step that I'm heading for this project, and I mean this is again a side project, but it can help teams kind of look at their different contracts, so we can see this is probably a better visualization if I go to all teams. The kind of next step for this project is looking at teams' contracts. So looking at, the green represents teams that are players that are under contract. Red is players that are going to free agency, and yellow is players that they need to sign. And so kind of my next step for this project would be to choose one team, given all these unrestricted free agents that we can pick for our team, what would be the kind of optimal mix. And so I'm at 27 minutes past the hour right now, so I'm kind of running out of time. But I'm more than happy to show anybody this next step offline, or I'm likely to have maybe another webinar if people are interested in 6 months' time or so. So I'll just wrap up the presentation by going back to the PowerPoint here. So what we saw in PalantirPLAN is I argued that NHL teams can and should be viewed as this portfolio of assets. They have specific performance indicators that they can be measured by, and that by using applications such as PalantirPLAN and this readily available data, we can help augment subjective decisions and experience. So, I mean, we saw that with the trade-off between the star center ice players. We can help augment decisions by maybe helping us find more of those diamond in the rough projects. But at the end of the day, execution, asset selection, and timing are going to be a key component to winning or getting the optimal payoff for shareholders. These applications aren't going to replace any of this experience. So I think what we're showing here is that it's more of a complementary tool set that we can use to help make better decisions.
Thank you, Jamie, for your presentation. If anybody has any questions in regards to today's webinar or PalantirPLAN, feel free to contact us